Ghosts N Goblins, Ghouls N Ghosts, and Super Ghouls N Ghosts, 3 games that have struck fear into the hearts of many, not just with their demonic and ghoulish settings, but also with their ball-crunching, anus-pounding difficulty. It's a series that old-school gamers are definitely familiar with, and simply mentioning the title will make most people wince in painful memory. The 3 games are like an unofficial trilogy, bursting at the seams with a badass and ungodly amount of medieval challenge. The brief history is that Ghosts N Goblins was an arcade game released back in 1985 that emptied pockets and destroyed dreams. Its plot is the same as the rest. You must conquer the devil and his evil creatures to get back your princess. Despite its absurd difficulty, it's seen as one of Capcom's classics, and they do not hesitate to re-release these games in collections and reference the series in their other titles. Ghosts N Goblins received an astounding amount of ports, which are all interesting to look at, but the one most people played was for the Nintendo Entertainment System, and that will be our focus today. Ghosts N Goblins' direct sequel was Ghouls N Ghosts, released in 1988, and its most popular port was for the Sega Genesis. The third game we will be discussing is Super Ghouls N Ghosts, which was actually a Super Nintendo exclusive and not an original arcade release. These 3 ports make up an interesting and unofficial trilogy between 3 different home consoles. Just like we did previously with the Ninja Gaiden Trilogy, we're going to be taking a full look at each of these 3 games, conquering each one, and seeing what makes them so damn hard. Ghosts N Goblins is considered one of the top 3 to 5 hardest NES games and usually one of the top 10 hardest games of all time, period. Although it only has 6 different levels and unlimited continues, the raw challenge has forced gamers into submission for the past 30 years now. It reminds you that it's not about the amount of levels put into a game, but the amount of game put into those levels. In other words, there are just 6 levels, but when you play, it feels like there are about 6 million ways to die. In general, there are about 5 things that make these games so difficult, and they are: 1. It only takes 2 hits to die. You can only make 1 mistake per try, otherwise the next one is fatal. Secondly, the control. You may have just thought to yourself, 2 hits to die is similar to something like a Mario game. You are right, but the major difference is how much harder it is to avoid being hit. And the lack of control you have over your character is a big obstacle. You cannot control yourself in the air, and your jumps have fixed distances, meaning you only have a jump to the left, straight up, and to the right. Plus, momentum doesn't exist in this game, which is also really awkward. Number 3, checkpoints are scarce. Dying wouldn't be so terrible if you didn't have to go back so far. Number 4, some of the enemies are ridiculous, and you are totally underpowered compared to many of them. Number 5, the game has some really shitty weapons that are just put there to get in the way, and can totally hinder your progress until you pick up something more helpful. The weapon you'll be crossing your fingers for the most is what many call the knife, although technically it's referred to as the sword in the manual. It's fast and can be thrown 3 at a time as opposed to twice, and that is a massive help. We will talk more about the other weapons as they come up, so for now, let's just jump right in. The first level takes place in a graveyard. Zombies rise up from the earth and dart toward Knight Arthur, along with pesky crows that swoop in a weaving pattern, making him harder to hit. There are some tombstones in place to get the player used to how jumping feels. Flowers shoot orbs as you try to move forward through it all. After mowing down all the zombies, you encounter an enemy that is quite unique. These red devils are surprisingly hard to hit and can be very cheap. They hang out of range, require 4 hits to kill, and are also able to swoop right through your character. Using fadeaway jumps while throwing is the best way to deal with these guys, but it usually feels like there's never a complete guarantee that they won't hit you at least once. The second half of the level has these very obnoxious squealing ghouls that loop around and sometimes shoot or drop forks. Every level has a boss at the end, and this large guy is referred to as a unicorn. He shuffles around, shooting an orb or 2 out every so often. This is a good time to mention that Ghosts N Goblins has a very strange randomness factor going on. It feels like almost everything is determined by RNG, from where enemies spawn to what they actually do, seems different every time. The unicorn is like this too. Sometimes he bulldozes right through you and you can't do anything about it. Sometimes he hops around, or he may just hang back and take your punishment. It requires 10 hits to end his life, and at the end of every level, a glowing key falls from the heavens above to unlock the next part. Level 2 is where most people give up, and it's for good reason. The difficulty makes it feel like an absolutely brutal last level to most games, but no, there's still 4 levels after this. The first section is an icy blue castle where you must keep jumping upward and forward while being harassed by little blue devils. You need to have all well-placed shots to make sure they don't have a good chance to swoop in on you. As you make your way upward and to the right, you must make a jump to a falling platform, and from there you have already reached the checkpoint. The second part, though, is where things get serious. It requires minutes of perfect execution. There's a house of ogres that absolutely sucks. They're faster than you, each one takes 10 hits to kill, just like the previous level's boss, and if they throw their big purple projectile while running at you, you're basically done for. On top of all this, there are damn crows constantly swooping in while you're fighting them. You have to take down around 6 ogres, and this isn't easy to do with their random behavior and them helping each other by dropping blocks on your head. You never know what to expect when you get to this part. At the top right of the house, if you jump or climb in the wrong area, the game puts a super shitty weapon, known as the torch, right on top of the only ladder you can use to move forward. There's no way to make it disappear. If you already have a good weapon like the knife, it honestly makes more sense to kill yourself and to try again at this point. If you dare to pick up the torch, it's got a short range and you can only throw 2 at once, which is especially terrible because if you miss your target, it burns on the floor for a couple seconds, leaving you totally defenseless and vulnerable. Another thing to mention is the time limit. I don't know about you, but most games I've played with the time limit don't press you very hard, but this one here can be pretty tough. It's a long way to go to make it through the whole ogre house. And afterward, there's a tedious section with some moving platforms that can eat up the clock and be tricky with the awkward controls. I can tell you that it doesn't feel good to make it through the whole ogre house just to fall in some water and have to do it all over again. One item that really helps is that if you jump at the right spot off of this platform, it drops a time bonus item that adds another minute to your time. Eventually, after all the ogres, crows, and jumps, you get to the boss, which is 2 unicorns this time. The strategy here is that you definitely only want one on the screen at a time. Doing a jump toward the first one to get some initial hits is important too. With their unpredictable behavior, in order to have a chance here, you'll hopefully still have your armor on in case you just get hit once. If you die, that means starting back here and doing the entire ogre house and all those jumps again. Level 3, you're in a cave, and it starts out simple enough with some bats and zombies. You'll run into some strange enemies that are like little mountains with angry faces that shoot out blue balls, probably to symbolize the bruises your sack has endured from getting this far. The second half starts in a blue cave, and it's at this point right here I highly recommend waiting around for a knife to drop if you don't have one already, because this cave is some serious shit. There are some parts with little enemies to surprise you here and there, like ghouls and these little porkers, but the weight of the difficulty lies with the minimum of 4 red devils you need to face. It's hard enough to get by one of these guys without being hit, so you could imagine why 4 can be a total nightmare. That's why having the knife really helps at this point. Jumping toward them while throwing before the devil takes flight is an easy way to get a hit or two, and then just waiting for that moment when you can use the fadeaway throw technique to finish it off. The devils can also behave differently than before, so once again, all you can do is clinch and hope for the best. Whatever you do, do not throw a weapon at this devil, otherwise he will follow you down there, and then you're in the middle of a red devil sandwich, and at that point you already know your butt is going to get gaped by both of them. You'll also notice the trend the developers really enjoy their put the shitty weapons in the way joke. If you accidentally pick up this torch and lose to the boss, that means you would have to use it to take down all 4 red devils.
That's very disturbing.
After the last devil, you will have a new boss to face off with. 3 unicorns. No, I'm just kidding. It's a dragon. Unlike some enemies before this, he actually has a pattern, and once it's learned, he's not too terrible. The unfortunate part is that you're bound to get to him with no armor and die a few times, which sends you back to the beginning of the cave to take on the 4 red devils again. Your weapon can destroy the dragon's body, making him easier to avoid, but it requires 8 hits to his face before you can move on. Level 4 has got to be the easiest level in the game. It starts off with what feels like a little maze of floating eyeball platforms. It really isn't much to figure out, just need to overcome the stiff jumping. You make your way to the right, and it's not a very long section. It's funny that they bother to put a 1-up here, as if a game with unlimited continues needs those. At the end of the section, you'll want to jump over this devil and run toward the bridge as fast as you can, so you can at least reach the checkpoint. This bridge area isn't that bad either. If you just keep running to the right and throw your weapon behind you, it won't give you that much trouble. There's just one more red devil to take care of before the boss, which by the way is not 2 dragons, believe it or not, just one of them again. Same strategy as last time and he'll be toast. Level 5 is tough. There's no longer a halfway checkpoint for the last 2 levels, and they're both very difficult. You basically climb your way up the castle, dealing with those little blue imps that now have a projectile, the randomly appearing ghouls, and some skeletons. The biggest thing to remember is to keep moving forward. If you see an opening, you must take it, otherwise you can get in some really sticky situations with the skeletons, imps, and ghouls. This axe they placed here is worth talking about. You might ask yourself, how bad could the axe possibly be? The axe is a weapon that you can throw 2 of, and it goes through enemies, so it's pretty useful actually to mow down multiple zombies at once, but you can't throw any until both are off the screen. And right after this, you come up to an area where you need to take down some ogres again, and no joke, this weapon makes it impossible to fight these guys. It's just another same old shitty weapon joke from before. With that being said, avoid the axe in order to take down the ogres. The ghouls spawning in the same area can make it a real pain in the ass. Halfway through the level, it does give you another set of armor if you've been hit, which is super helpful for taking on a couple more ogres before finally climbing up to level 5's boss, a giant red devil appropriately named Satan. Satan protects himself with his wings until shooting star projectiles and swooping down for the attack. For the most part, as long as you're ducking, he actually can't hit you when he does this. All you need to do is focus on your positioning to avoid the stars he throws and using the fadeaway jumping technique when he swoops down. Then you can finish him off. Level 6 is the last level and is definitely the hardest. They throw everything at you this time around, and it requires some serious execution to conquer a stage of this caliber. You have to take down all of the different bosses in this level. So to start off, after some skeletons and a ghoul, you climb up for the first boss fight. Same problem as before, the unicorn doesn't really have a pattern, and he will sometimes just run or hop right into you, and there's nothing you can do about it. You just have to use what little space you have, fire your weapon as quickly as you can, and hope that he won't do that. After him, you climb up to fight another dragon with a new pattern that you must learn in order to take him down. It's a pretty intricate fight due to the fact that javelins can't actually kill the dragon. Oh, so is that why there's a torch before the dragon on level 3? Just in case you still had the javelin? Well, that doesn't change the fact that the torch is a super shitty weapon and they could have given you anything else. Anyway, against the dragon, the javelin can, however, take out sections of his body, and you must do that in order to avoid getting hit until it's time to grab the shield to finish him off. Unless you already happen to have the knife, this is literally the only way to kill the dragon right here. You might be thinking to yourself, well, at least if you have the shield and die, you start the level over with it and you can use it for both fights, right? Wrong, wrong, wrong. Of all things, the unicorn is immune to the shield. So you have to grab this javelin right here in order to fight the unicorn, and you have to grab the shield in order to fight the dragon. It is a gigantic load of ass, and it's the only way to make it happen. After this, you make your way further up with some ladders, and fortunately, they allow you to snag some armor again before facing 2 of the most annoying and deadly parts in the whole game. To start, you hop over another completely useless weapon that they put in your way again, and now you just need to wait for a perfect opening so you can come up this ladder against the ogre. You need to time it well so you have enough space to get in 10 hits as he rushes you. Things that can go wrong here are of course the ogre getting too close to you, getting hit by the skeleton enemy, or worst of all, accidentally waking up the red devil by getting too close or hitting him. You do not want to get this guy involved. Fortunately, for this situation, as you may have seen, the shield doesn't travel the full distance of the screen, and this actually helps avoid hitting the red devils. This situation here, though, is nothing compared to the second. At the next ladder, there's an ogre, red devil that you can't avoid, and a skeleton all right next to each other, plus a constantly spawning ghoul. The only way to get past this part is to carefully pick your timing, climb partway up the ladder in order to bait the red devil down, and then you can fight him down here. I'm not sure what it is, but this devil is a fucking lunatic. He's way more agitated and hyper than the rest of them. He shoots more orbs and swoops in constantly. You need to perfectly time your fadeaway jump attacks here and put 4 hits on him as fast as possible to avoid getting killed here. And again, you need to look out for that damn ghoul while doing this, because all it takes is for the ghoul to hit you once and the red devil to finish you off. Once you manage to kill the devil, you just have an ogre and skeleton left, but chances are that another ghoul will spawn somewhere randomly, and you need to be ready for that. Just have one more shitty weapon to jump over before the boss. The developers came back to the double boss trend. Now you have 2 Satans to deal with. As you could imagine, you definitely don't want both on the screen at the same time. You need to make them miss their throw, fade away attack, and duck to avoid them swooping down. The shield is pretty helpful here since it blocks the star projectile too. You need to get 8 hits in on each Satan in order to move on. Something to mention here is that if you finish this level with anything other than the shield, as in any of these weapons the developers put right in front of your face, you are sent back to level 5. It's not a rumor or a joke, just another sadistic thing the creators did of this game to extend your nightmare. The final boss here is called the Devil, and he's really not very hard at all. If you count this boss as level 7, then I'd say level 7 is the easiest in the game. If I were to rank the levels from easiest to hardest, I'd say it goes level 7, level 4, level 1, level 3, level 2, level 5, and finally with 6, of course, being at the very top. The Devil takes 10 hits to the face, the same amount as an ogre, to be killed. Once he dies, you're given a message with some classic typos about how the room is an illusion devised by Satan, and that you need to return to the graveyard to start again. And at this point, see, most people have turned off the game, and I don't entirely blame them, but the thing is, you can't say you've truly beaten this game if you do this. The reason why is because the second round of Ghosts and Goblins is in fact harder than the first round. Many enemies spawn at a faster rate and move quicker, like the zombies in levels 1 and 3, and the crows in level 2. The Red Devils are noticeably different as well. They all act like the Psycho one from level 6 by shooting more orbs and are more aggressive than before. I've also noticed that more ghouls seem to spawn in levels 5 and 6. These little tweaks that they made really push the difficulty considerably further than before. They definitely grabbed the difficulty dial and cranked it all the way to 11. Once you do beat the game though, you do at least get a real ending, and it is pretty much famous at this point for its typos and just how ridiculous it is. It says, "Congratulations, this story is happy end. Thank you. Being the wise and courageous knight that you are, you feel strength welling in your body. Return to starting point. Challenge again." Well, I won't be doing that, but what we will be doing is moving onward to the next game in the series, Ghouls N Ghosts on the Sega Genesis. How will Ghouls N Ghosts compare to its predecessor? Is it a better game? Will it somehow be even harder than Ghosts N Goblins? I look forward to finding out with you in part 2 of the Ghosts N Goblins series review, and I hope to see you next time. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. I have 2 other videos on difficult games such as the infamous Battletoads and the NES Ninja Gaiden Trilogy. If you want to change of pace, you can also see some rare demo game cartridges for the Super Nintendo and Nintendo 64, or visit my channel to see if anything else interests you. As always, thank you again very much for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. I will see you all again very, very soon.